So, on October 1st, Nigeria was supposed to be celebrating its Independence Day. Big military parade, the whole thing. But then, at the last minute, the government cancels it. No explanation, no warning, just silence. Now, sources are starting to talk, revealing why. It turns out 16 military officers from captain to Brigadier General have been detained by the Nigerian Armed Forces. Now, the government line is that this is just a disciplinary issue. They are saying it's about failed promotion exams. Basically, nothing to see here. But behind closed doors, intelligence sources are telling a completely different story. They are talking about an alleged plot, a planned military coup, and the date they supposedly chose when the president and all the top military officials will be gathered in one place. So what's really going on here? Is this Nigeria's closest brush with a coup since 1999? Or is this just a convenient excuse for the government to purge officers it doesn't trust? And why are most of these detained officers reportedly all northerners? Why was the alleged ringleader just back from a special combat course over in China? And why is the Nigerian military, supposedly one of Africa's most powerful forces, suddenly filled with whispers about low morale? This isn't just about Nigeria. All across West Africa, military takeovers have become more common. Mali, Guinea, they have all thrown off their civilian government. And just days ago, Madagascar joined that list. Democracy is under pressure across Africa. Revolutionary change is spreading. If Nigeria, the supposed giant of Africa, the anchor of West Africa, if it falls into instability, the shockwaves are going to be felt all the way from Dakar to Nairobi. So in today's show, we are diving deep into this alleged coup plot that has Nigeria on edge. We will look at whether the Nigerian military even wants to return to power, why Africa's democratic experiment might be reaching a breaking point. Let's get into it. It's September 28, 2025, 3 days before Nigeria's Independence Day. The government makes this stunning announcement. The annual military parade, a tradition that goes back to decades, is suddenly cancelled. No detailed explanation, no apology, just a brief statement. But what if the real reason had nothing to do with budget concerns and everything to do with security? You have to understand, for 65 years, Nigeria's Independence Day parades has been more than just a ceremony. It has always been a display of military might, a symbol of national pride. It's that moment when the armed forces march right before the president and the whole nation is watching. Tanks roll, soldiers march in formation. It's a reminder that this is the institution guaranteeing the state's survival. So when the government announced on September 28 that the parade was cancelled, Nigerians were confused. The official statement from the office of the secretary to the government of the federation, it was vague. It reads, the cancellation is in no way a diminishment of the significance of this milestone anniversary. The government remains committed to celebrating Nigeria's 65th year of independence with dignity and enthusiasm. Programs slated for the independence anniversary will remain in effect, but no specific reason was given. So why announce a cancellation just 3 days before the event? Why plan this parade for months only to pull the plug at the very last seconds? Opposition politicians started questioning the decision. The African Democratic Congress accused the presidency of being disconnected from reality. On social media, Nigerians are demanding answers. One commentator wrote, "You have not stated any reason for the cancellation. Not surprised. This administration is known for such behavior." The government just stayed silent. No press conferences, no detailed explanation, just that other independence activities would continue. And then, weeks later, the reports started to emerge. The parade wasn't cancelled because of budget constraints. According to intelligence sources, who were speaking to Nigerian media outlets. It was cancelled because agencies had allegedly uncovered something far more dangerous, a plot to use that very parade as the stage for a military coup. 3 weeks later, the truth would start to leak out, and it would shake Nigeria to its core. 16 military officers locked in detention, an alleged plot, and a date that was reportedly chosen for maximum impact, October 1st, the very day the parade was supposed to happen. Now, on October 4th, Defense Headquarters breaks silence. 16 military officers from captain to brigadier general have been arrested. The official story: career stagnation, failed promotion exams. But on October 17th, a very different story emerged from intelligence sources. And this story involved alleged assassination plans, a military takeover, and officers planning this for months. Then, a day later, October 18th, the military fires back with a denial. So, who's telling the truth? When General Toko Guzo, the director of the Defense Information, addressed the nation on October 4th, his statement was very measured. He said, "The Armed Forces of Nigeria wishes to inform the public over the issue of indiscipline and breach of service regulations. Investigations have revealed that their grievance stemmed from perceived career stagnation caused by repeated failure in promotion examinations." He added that some of the apprehended officers under jurisdiction for various offenses are waiting or undergoing trial, and that their conduct was deemed incompatible with the standards of military service. It all sounded routine, bureaucratic, almost boring. Just another case of disgruntled officers who couldn't pass their exams. Move along, nothing to see here. But then Sahara Reporters published a bombshell on October 17th. According to sources, senior officials from the Defense Intelligence Agency took part in the operation. Those 16 officers were detained for allegedly planning a coup. A senior intelligence source told the publication the military authorities were just being diplomatic in the statement released by the spokesperson. They have started holding secret meetings on how to overthrow the president and other top government officials. They are all officers within the ranks of captain to brigadier general and are still in detention. They were picked recently at their various houses around the country. Their main objective was to overthrow President Tinubu and announce a military government. Another source revealed more alarming details. The officers allegedly planned to strike during that October 1st parade. The plan was to shoot at the president and other top politicians. That's why the National Security Advisor and service chiefs asked the government to cancel the parade. Intelligence reports showed they planned the coup on October 1st during a military parade. And then came the most explosive detail. The alleged ringleader, a lieutenant colonel, an infantry officer, reportedly returned from a special combat course in China. This Amakura had been posted to the office of the National Security Advisor just months earlier, and he's the nephew of Tanko Umaru Amakura, former governor and current chairman of the Universal Basic Education Commission. Most of the detained officers, sources claimed, are northerners attached to the NSA office. But just 24 hours later, on October 18th, the Defense Headquarters issued a blistering response. In a new statement signed by Brigadier General Toko, the military categorically denied everything. The reports are entirely false, malicious, and intended to cause unnecessary tension and distrust among the populace. The statement, according to the military spokesperson, read, "Now, the Defense Headquarters never mentioned any coup attempt. The investigation of the 16 officers is a routine internal process aimed at ensuring discipline and professionalism is maintained within the ranks." The statement went further. It explained that the Independence Day parade cancellation had nothing to do with any alleged coup plot. Now, instead, they said the parade was cancelled to allow President Tinubu to attend a strategic bilateral meeting outside the country and to allow armed forces members to sustain the momentum in the fight against terrorism, insurgency, and banditry. Then came this declaration which sent shockwaves through political circles. Democracy is forever. The armed forces of Nigeria remains firmly loyal to the constitution and the federal government under the leadership of the Commander-in-Chief, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. The statement promised an investigation panel has been set up and its findings will be made public. Nigeria is facing two completely contradictory narratives. You have intelligence sources speaking anonymously to multiple media outlets, insisting there was a real plot that nearly succeeded. And then you have the defense headquarters speaking officially and on record, insisting the entire story is false, malicious, and designed to create panic. They say the parade was cancelled for diplomatic and operational reasons. The officers were arrested for indiscipline. Democracy in Nigeria is safe. Nothing to see here. But here's what makes this so explosive. The military's denial is very carefully worded. They say they never mentioned any attempt in their official communications. Well, that's true. But notice what they don't say. They don't explicitly deny that a coup plot existed. They don't name the sources who spoke to the media and call them liars. They don't explain why, if this is just routine discipline. And they definitely don't address why most of the detained officers are reportedly from one region of Nigeria. If you look at how Nigeria's military has operated since 1999, it makes very little sense. This is my own opinion and from opinions of many analysts that I have spoken to ever since this report came out. The military already controls more than people realize. The military is stronger and more influential in Nigeria's politics than many realize. Is this about failed exams and careers? Or is the Nigerian government trying to manage a narrative, trying to avoid admitting how close it came to losing power? We need to go inside the Nigerian military itself. And what we find here suggests that whether or not there was an actual coup plot, the conditions for one certainly exist. July 2025, a video went viral. Nigerian soldiers frustrated, complaining right on camera about the poor quality of their meals. The army chief orders an immediate investigation, of course, but that video wasn't an isolated incident. It was a symptom of something much deeper. A military that is facing serious challenges with pay, with promotion transparency, and with morale. The video was raw. It was unfiltered. Soldiers sitting in barracks, looking at these plates of food that just appeared totally inadequate. They spoke quietly, but their frustrations were clear. This is what they feed us. This is how they treat us. We are out here fighting insurgents, and this is what we get. The army chief, Lieutenant General Olufemi Oluyede, ordered an immediate investigation, but the damage was already done. The world had just seen what Nigerian soldiers had been saying privately for years. The military faces serious welfare challenges. The pay crisis is well documented. Reports indicate non-commissioned officers in the Nigerian army are earning between 48,000 to 68,000 naira, $34 per month. That makes them among the lowest paid security forces in Nigeria. For soldiers deployed to the northeast to fight Boko Haram or to the northwest to battle bandits, those wages are very concerning. They are being asked to risk their lives for their country, but they are struggling to feed their families. And then there is the promotion system. Soldiers describe it as opaque, prone to favoritism. One soldier told reporters, if there are 50 soldiers due for promotion in a unit, they will pick only 25 or 30. Of being in a rank for 4 or 5 years, you will be there 7 or 8 years. The system is influenced by tribal, religious, and monetary factors. Some names apparently appear twice on promotion lists because of alleged corruption. Officers who refuse to pay bribes or who just come from certain ethnic backgrounds reportedly find their careers completely frozen. Now, the Nigerian army has vigorously denied these allegations. The army insists that promotions follow the Armed Forces of Nigeria harmonized terms and conditions of service, which bases advancement on merit, performance evaluations, course completion, medical fitness, and promotion board recommendations. The army also highlighted Chief Oloyede's Soldier First initiative, which reportedly doubled the ration cash allowance and enhanced the Nigerian Army Welfare Loan Scheme. But this disconnect between the official statement and the soldiers' complaint is hard to ignore, because in 2022, soldiers wrote to the Chief of Defense Staff about injustice in promotion exercises. Videos surfaced in 2025 showing troops complaining about inadequate food supplies. And now, you have got 16 officers in detention with two completely competing narratives about why. Here is the paradox. Why the ranks and file soldiers are struggling with poverty wages, the top military brass, they live extremely comfortable. In December 2024, President Tinubu signed into law harmonized conditions of service for officers and enlisted personnel in the Nigerian Armed Forces. Get this, the retirement package for military generals includes bulletproof SUVs that are replaced every 4 years, all maintained by the military. $24,000 annually for foreign medical treatment for lieutenant generals, $15,000 for major generals, and $10,000 for brigadier generals. This is along with domestic aides, cooks, stewards, gardens, plus residential guards and personal assistants. This is the military establishment, and this is why a coup in many ways makes no sense, because the generals who would plan a coup are the exact same generals who benefit massively from the current system. They have lucrative contracts, massive retirement packages, business interests that thrive under civilian rules. Why would they risk all of that just to seize power? But the rank and file, the captains, the majors, lieutenant colonels who are stuck in their ranks for years, who can barely feed their families, who watch corrupt superiors get promoted right ahead of them. For them, frustration could turn into desperation and conspiracy. But military discontent is only half the story, because while soldiers were protesting their poor living conditions, ordinary Nigerians were taking the street by the hundreds of thousands, demanding an end to hunger, poverty, and bad governance. Some of them, they were waving foreign flags, calling for change. Now the lines between military grievances and civilian frustration was starting to get very, very blurry. August 2024, Nigeria just erupts. Hundreds of thousands of people flood the street in massive anti-government protest. They call it EndBadGovernance. The government responds with force. By the end of just the first 10 days, Amnesty International confirms that at least 24 protesters are dead, with over 100 people arrested. In Kano, something unprecedented happens. Protesters start waving Russian flags, calling for intervention. The military has to come out and warn them. Waving a foreign flag is a serious offense. Now, these protests were triggered by President Tinubu's economic reforms, because back in May 2023, just days after he took office, Tinubu removed the fuel subsidy that had kept petrol prices low for decades. The naira was devalued, inflation skyrocketed, the prices of food, transportation, basic goods, it all doubled, then it tripled. For ordinary Nigerians who were already struggling to survive, it was catastrophic. By August 2024, that anger had reached a boiling point. Hundreds of thousands of Nigerians, most of them young, poured into the streets in cities all across the country. They carried placards reading hunger, corruption, and bad governance. They demanded that the government reverse the subsidy removal, stabilize the naira, and just address the cost of living crisis. The government response was forceful. Security forces deployed tear gas, live ammunition in some instances, and made mass arrests. According to Amnesty International's investigation, at least 24 protesters were killed by police between August 1st and 10th in Kano, Jigawa, Katsina, Borno, Niger, and Kaduna states. Over 1,200 people were arrested. But one of the most shocking moments came in Kano, in northern Nigeria. A group of protesters carried Russian flags and started chanting slogans. This was unprecedented because for decades, Nigerians prided themselves on their independence, rejecting foreign intervention. But now, in the streets of Kano, some young Nigerians were openly waving Russian flags. The Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, had to declare that waving a foreign flag was a serious offense. Fast forward to October 2025, economic frustration is still ongoing. Reports indicate nearly 80 million young Nigerians are unemployed or underemployed. Every year, an estimated 1.7 million graduates enter the labor market with limited opportunities. Inflations remain high, hunger is real, and here is where military discontent and civilian frustration intersect. These soldiers earning low wages while fighting insurgents in the northeast, they can see their struggles mirror those of ordinary Nigerians. They are fighting to protect a system that is struggling to protect them. They are risking their lives while both they and the civilians around them face the same economic hardship. When intelligence sources said that 16 officers allegedly wanted to save Nigeria from selfish politicians, some people within the military might sympathize with that. This is the Nigeria that 16 officers allegedly wanted to address through force. But Nigeria isn't alone in this crisis, because across Africa, frustrated soldiers and desperate civilians are reaching very similar conclusions about how effective their governments are. Since 2020, Africa has seen this significant wave of military takeovers. Mali, Guinea, Burkina Faso, Niger, Gabon, Sudan, Chad, and just days ago, Madagascar. The pattern is clear. Democracy is under severe pressure, and the military is stepping in across multiple countries. And now, Nigeria, Africa's most populous nation, West Africa's economic giant, is facing its own alleged coup plot. This wave really began in Mali back in August 2020, when Colonel Assimi Goïta overthrew President Ibrahim Keïta. The justification sounded familiar. The civilian government had failed to defeat jihadist insurgents. Corruption was rampant, and the people were suffering. In September 2021, Guinea's military overthrew President Alpha Condé after he tried to run for a third term. January 2022, Burkina Faso's military seizes power, citing the government's failure to combat terrorism. July 2023, Niger's presidential guard overthrows President Mohamed Bazoum. August 2023, Gabon's military toppled the Bongo dynasty. October 2021, Sudan had its military takeover. October 2025, Madagascar's Michael Randrianirina took power after youth protests, which were initially sparked by power outage, just spiraled into a political crisis. Now, the common threats here are clear: economic difficulties, governance crisis, youth-led protests, military grievances, and a deep frustration with existing systems. In many countries, the military presented itself as saviors, and significant portions of the population actually celebrated them. The most revolutionary development is what's happening in the Sahel: Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. They haven't just overthrown their civilian government, they have challenged the entire post-colonial order. These countries withdrew from the Economic Community of West African States, commonly called ECOWAS, and formed the Alliance of Sahel States, or AES. It's a confederation committed to economic sovereignty, military cooperation, and regional integration. The AES represents more than just a military alliance. It's a Pan-African project, and it's resonating with millions. Now, these three countries are working towards a common currency to replace systems they see as externally controlled. They are creating a joint military force to fight jihadist threats. They have launched initiatives for shared passports and regional investment. They have kicked out French military bases. They have renamed streets that honor colonial figures, and they are building new partnerships with countries like Russia and China, nations that offer different models of cooperation. For millions of young Africans, the AES represents a bold alternative vision. These are leaders who rejected foreign troops, who rejected what they saw as neo-colonial interference, who are trying to build systems that prioritize African sovereignty. Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso, he has become a Pan-African icon at just 37 years of age. He speaks with a clarity that resonates across the continent when he says, "We are not anti-anyone, we are pro-African." We want to control our own resources and build our own future. For Nigeria, the rise is both an inspiration and a warning. Remember, President Tinubu, as chairman of ECOWAS, led the sanctions against Niger's military government after that 2023 takeover. He threatened consequences. He cut off electricity supplies to Niger, and in response, protesters in Niger were waving placards criticizing him. Ultimately, the sanctions failed. The threatened military intervention never materialized, and ECOWAS, once the most powerful regional bloc in West Africa, is now significantly weakened. If Nigeria experiences a successful military intervention or prolonged instability, West Africa loses its anchor. ECOWAS could collapse, oil markets would destabilize, threats from jihadist groups could expand. A successful coup in Nigeria will send a message to the entire continent. No country is too big or too important to be immune from a military takeover. The question isn't just whether Nigeria will experience a coup. The question is, can Nigeria's democracy even survive when its own military is facing serious moral challenges? Its people are economically desperate, and the entire region is watching military government consolidate power one after another. Nigeria as a country is no stranger to military takeovers. It all started in January 15th, 1966. Nigeria's first republic ends in blood. Young military officers storm government buildings, they assassinate political leaders, and they seize power. It's the first of multiple successful coups Nigeria will experience over the next 3 decades. Each time, the military promises to save the nation. Each time, they stay for longer than they initially planned. Each time, ethnic and regional tensions intensify. Could 2025 mark a return to that same pattern? The 1966 coup was supposed to be a revolution against corruption. You had these young officers frustrated by ethnic favoritism and mismanagement in the First Republic, and they decided to act. They killed the Prime Minister of the Northern Region and the Premier of the Western Region and other senior military officers. But the coup went terribly wrong. Most of the victims were Northerners, and most of the coup plotters were Igbos. The coup was quickly labeled an ethnic power grab, an attempt by one group to dominate Nigeria. Within months, a counter-coup brought northern officers to power, and by 1967, Nigeria was plunged into a brutal civil war that killed over 3 million people. Nigeria's coup history is just marked by trauma. In 1975, General Murtala Mohammed overthrew General. In 1983, General Muhammadu Buhari, Nigeria's late former president, the immediate past president, overthrew President Shehu Shagari, also during an economic crisis. In 1985, General Ibrahim Babangida overthrew Buhari himself. And then, in 1993, General Sani Abacha seized power after an annulled election. Each time, the military promised to restore order and hand power back to civilians. They ruled far longer than they initially stated. Nigeria spent nearly 3 decades under military rule from 1966 to 1979 and again from 1983 to 1999. When Nigeria returned to democracy in 1999, there was hope. It represents Nigeria's longest period of uninterrupted civilian rule. But the shadows of military governance, they've never fully disappeared. Civil-military tensions persist. Coup rumors surface periodically, and now in 2025, 16 officers are in detention, with competing narratives about what they intended. The parallels between today's alleged plot and Nigeria's coup history, economic crisis, governance challenges, ethnic tensions, military frustration. The officers frustrated by career stagnation, low pay and corruption, they echo the grievances of so many Nigerian coup plotters since 1966. And the reported fact that most of the detained officers are Northerners just raises uncomfortable questions about regional tensions. Now, there is also a particular question that haunts many Nigerians. Is this alleged 2025 plot genuine, or is the government using coup allegations to purge officers from rival regions, just repeating those old patterns of suspicion and division? Nigeria's coup history teaches us that ethnic and regional fault lines can tear the country apart. If officers are detained based on their region rather than on evidence, then Nigeria risks repeating its darkest chapters. But here's what many people don't understand. The military that ruled Nigeria from 1966 to 1999 is the same military that designed the system that currently exists today in Nigeria. And that military has very good reasons not to disrupt it. Nigeria's coup history teaches one clear lesson. When soldiers lose faith in civilian leadership, instability follows. So as 16 officers sit in detention and the government insists this is all about military discipline, while intelligence sources insist it was a real coup plot, Nigerians are just left to wonder, is this crisis contained or is it just beginning? Because the way this ends will determine not just Nigeria's future, but the trajectory of democracy all across Africa. So here's the question, why would the Nigerian military want to stage a coup when they already control everything that matters? Back in May 1999, General Abdulsalami Abubakar handed power to a retired general, Olu. It was celebrated everywhere as Nigeria's transition to democracy. Newspapers around the world praised the military for giving up power. The international community applauded. Nigeria had finally escaped military dictatorship. But here's what they didn't tell you. The military never really left. On May 5th, 1999, just 3 weeks before that handover, General Abubakar promulgated a new constitution through Decree number 24. This wasn't a constitution written by the Nigerian people. It wasn't drafted by elected representatives. It wasn't debated through a referendum. The Constitution Debate Coordinating Committee was appointed by General Abubakar, held some public hearings, yes, submitted its report on December 30th, 1998. Then, the military's Provisional Ruling Council debated it, accepted some recommendations, rejected others, and then on May 5th, 1999, they promulgated the final version by military decree. The constitution was finalized by a panel appointed by General Abubakar and adopted by the Military Provisional Ruling Council. There was a consensus among Nigerian civil society organizations that the process by which the constitution was adopted was illegitimate. But the military didn't care. They wrote the rules, structured the current federation, determined how revenue would be allocated, embedded military interest into the constitutional framework, and handed the pen to the civilians and said, now you are in charge. The structure, the system, the framework all remained military designed. For 26 years, civilian leaders have largely left it untouched. The 1999 Constitution designates the president as commander-in-chief with executive powers over military appointments, promotion, and discipline. The National Assembly controls military budgets and composition. But here's the catch. The military leadership knows civilian politicians depend on them for internal security, for protecting oil infrastructure, for suppressing protest, for maintaining order. The Nigerian military is indispensable, and that indispensability translates directly into influence and wealth. Just consider those retirement benefits approved in December 2024. The harmonized terms and conditions of service signed by President Tinubu on December 14th, 2024 grants service chiefs bulletproof SUVs, replaced and maintained every 4 years, a Peugeot 508 as a backup vehicle, $20,000 annually for foreign medical treatment, foreign domestic aids, cooks, stewards, gardeners, 3 security escorts. They get to retain their personal firearms. Lieutenant generals, they get 2 Toyota Hilux vehicles or 1 Toyota Land Cruiser, along with $20,000 annually for medical treatment. Major generals get $15,000. Brigadier generals get $10,000. Now, these are not the benefits of an institution that wants to overthrow the government. These are the benefits of an institution that has negotiated a comfortable arrangement with the government. But it goes deeper. Military chiefs and retired generals, they control massive business interests. Oil pipeline surveillance contracts alone are worth billions of naira every year. Military-linked private security firms operate all across the country, protecting infrastructure, escorting convoys, guarding facilities. Contracts are credibly lucrative, and they flow to those military connections. Reports have documented how former military chiefs were implicated in fraudulent arms procurement deals. In May 2016, then Vice President Yemi Osibanjo stated that approximately $15 billion, equal to about half of Nigeria's foreign currency reserves at the time, was stolen from the public treasury through fraudulent procurement schemes under the previous administration. A Transparency International report detailed how defense sector corruption enabled political elites to accumulate wealth, all the while weakening Nigeria's counter-terrorism capacity. National Security Advisor Sambo Dasuki was charged in connection with phantom contracts and unauthorized fund transfers totaling billions of dollars. And then there is the legacy of General Sani Abacha, who ruled Nigeria from 1993 to 1998. Transparency International estimates that he misappropriated up to $5 billion in public funds during his regime. As of 2022, approximately $3.65 billion in Abacha-linked assets have been recovered by the Nigerian government from various countries, including Switzerland, the United States, JC, Liechtenstein, and others. The system that allowed this corruption continues to benefit those at the top. Nigerians are increasingly recognizing this reality. A BBC report from June 2024 quoted a historian saying, "A military coup will be almost impossible in Nigeria today." The military itself has exhausted its own historic possibilities because over time, the military has been shown to be as venal as the political class. The Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, declared, "We want to make it clear that the armed forces of Nigeria are here to protect democracy." This is just rhetoric. It's a recognition that the current system serves military interests better than military rule ever could. If the military stages a coup in Nigeria today, they inherit all of Nigeria's problems: the collapsed economy, the 80 million unemployed youth, the insurgency in the northeast, the banditry in the northwest, the separatist movement in the southeast and the southwest. Then comes the international sanctions, the diplomatic isolation, the suspension from ECOWAS, frozen assets, cancelled arms deals. Under military rule, they will be blamed for everything. Under civilian rule, they can blame the politicians while continuing to profit. And here's the most important point: the rank and file soldiers who might have grievances, the captains, the majors, the lieutenant colonels earning poverty wages, don't have the power to stage a successful coup. Coups require coordination at the highest level, buy-in from service chiefs, generals, commanders who control resources and troops. Those generals have no incentive to risk comfortable positions for military rule. So if there was a coup plot involving 16 officers, from captain to brigadier general, it was doomed from the very start. Because without the support of the top brass, without control of key military installations, without coordination all across service branches, a coup in Nigeria is impossible. This is why many analysts believe the alleged coup plot, if it existed, was either amateurish or never a serious threat, and why the defense headquarters could confidently declare, "Democracy is forever." But here's the uncomfortable truth nobody wants to say out loud. Nigeria is not really a democracy, it's a hybrid system. One where civilian politicians provide the facade of legitimacy, while military and security elites control the real structure of power. The military doesn't need a coup because they never really gave up control. This doesn't mean Nigeria is safe from instability. If economic collapse continues, if hunger spreads, if youth unemployment remains catastrophic, if government failures keep piling up, even the generals might conclude that an intervention is necessary to protect their own interest. Or, more likely, you will get frustrated mid-level officers who might attempt something desperate and reckless. That will force military leadership to suppress them or reluctantly take power to maintain unity. But for now, the Nigerian military has no interest in a coup. They profit more from democracy than they would from dictatorship. They have learned from Africa's recent coup that international isolation is costly and recognize that managing Nigeria's crisis is harder than blaming civilians. So when the defense headquarters said there was no coup plot, they might be telling the truth. Not because Nigerian soldiers are happy or loyal to democracy, but because the generals who would have authorized a coup are too comfortable, wealthy, and invested in the current system to risk destroying it. This is the reality of civil-military relations in Nigeria. It's not pretty, it's not inspiring, but it's the truth. Despite the alleged plot, detained officers, despite all the competing narratives, Nigeria's democracy, as flawed, corrupt, and dysfunctional as it is, will probably survive, not because Nigerians love it, but because the military prefers it. Now, if you have watched to this point, this is Frontline Africa, where we talk about geopolitics from Africa's own point of view, where we bring you the stories with the kind of details mainstream media does everything to avoid. And I can tell you for a fact, in this particular matter, there is no chance there will be a military coup in today's Nigeria. And I believe I have made this point very clear from the beginning to the end of this episode. If you want to see more of my videos, maybe consider to subscribe and turn on those notifications. I am your host, Ezekiel Enejeta, and I will see you in the next one.